Welcome to the We Are All Dying podcast. My name is Jenna Goodhand, and my hope is that through these conversations, we become more comfortable, competent, and confident talking about death. On today's show, I chat with Jenny Duffy. She is on the committee for the Homeless Memorial in Toronto that is done through the Church of Holy Trinity. Welcome, Jenny, to the chat. I'm so excited to have you here today and talk about the Homeless Memorial in Toronto that you're a part of.
Thank you so much, Jenna. I'm so happy to be here.
This is such an important topic, and there's so much that I don't know. In our previous pre-chat, I was really opened up to a lot of things about the deaths of unhoused people and the things that I hadn't considered. So I'm really looking forward to today and hoping that those listening today really dig deep and start to bring some of these ideas and understandings into their own life and share these conversations with others, especially when they're hearing people saying things that might be unkind or unfavorable. And I do hope that this brings some attention to the monthly memorials and not just Toronto, but all cities, and may inspire some people to show up to them. So, what I'd like to start with is can you just give us an overview of what the monthly homeless memorial is?
Yeah, so the Toronto Homeless Memorial, so it began in the 1990s by an amazing activist named Bonnie Briggs. She has passed away now, but she was inspired to start the Toronto Homeless Memorial after seeing the War Memorial at Old City Hall. She thought, well, if war veterans have a memorial, why can't people who die unhoused have one too? And it was really important for her to create something where people can be remembered and their names not forgotten. There's a really good quote from her that I wanted to read. She said, I wanted society to realize that these are real people and deserving of the same respect we give our loved ones when they die. I also hoped that the ever increasing list of names would act as an incentive to work for change and an end to homelessness.
Wow.
So Bonnie, she started the homeless memorial. She started a committee, and there's a partnership with Church of the Holy Trinity. So I work at Church of the Holy Trinity, and I'm also a part of the homeless memorial committee as well. So the actual structure of the memorial is located at the church, and every month, the second Tuesday of every month, we gather and we read the names of people who have died in the shelters, on the streets, those who have died unhoused. And we invite folks to come up and share memories. We often have some songs and music and smudging, and it's a moment to hold each other's grief and to lift people up in memory.
That's so beautiful. And so this runs every month throughout the whole year. I think the next one is tomorrow, December 10th. So
Yes, that's
uh,
right.
when people listen, that might have passed, but you can definitely tune into the next one. I did see that you actually put them live on Facebook, so people can tune in even if they can't be there, which I think is incredible.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I was just about to say that. Yeah, it's on the Church of the Holy Trinity Facebook if you did want to watch the live stream.
Amazing. So I have some very it just seems like, statistical questions or like detailed
Yeah.
questions that are just out of curiosity around, like how do the names get identified every month? How do you know who's died? I mean, there's a lot in here, but
Yeah.
share what you know and what you can. But um, how does it come to your knowledge when someone has died unhoused? Is there challenges around namings of these people? Contact so can you kind of share like where that comes from? Because that to me was just like a huge question mark.
Yeah, it's a bit of a variety of sources. So we work closely with a bunch of community organizations. And so every month we invite folks to share names of people they know who have passed away and to let us know. We're also connected to many families. Like we try to have like a wide network of people. We will also hear firsthand from folks on the streets as well. Um, the city also collects data as well. There are definitely um, gaps with that process, but it is really common to not know the names of folks, unfortunately, where at the memorial, we are reading Jane Doe,
Wow.
John Doe.
Yeah.
Yeah, where it just isn't possible to find the names or for us to know who the friends and family were of these individuals in order to know that information. And that's really, really sad. We still read that name John Doe and remember that person, but it's always like especially, I don't know, lack of a better word, like really harrowing, really like it's just really awful that this is the situation, that people are dying at all like this, but that people are also dying where like we don't know their names.
Yeah, even just, thinking about how some people talk about and think about unhoused people as not, fully human or fully present, as
Yeah.
nameless, right? And then for them to die and also not know their name is just like this extra sadness, right? Of how out of touch we are and our lack of, connection to these people. Um, One thing you said to me that has really stuck with me is about how, when you're living unhoused and someone has died unhoused as well, like this might be like a regular occurrence, right? While you're also, trying to struggle yourself. Can you speak a little bit to what those unhoused people might experience in grief that's those of us who have, more stable housing situations don't experience?
Yeah, what you're saying is absolutely right. It's from what I observe, it is such a normal occurrence for people who are unhoused to experience death of other unhoused folks who are friends, who are chosen family, and to be grieving and often multiple deaths. It may not even just be experiencing one death, but it's so common where it's just so much all at once, and people are navigating so much loss, and yet they themselves are still trying to survive and themselves trying to keep themselves alive.
Right.
And so in talking to folks, sometimes just from my perception, it almost seems like people don't have time to grieve because they just have to keep going, going,
Yeah.
going, and thinking about, okay, I have a tent now, my tent has holes, I need to patch it up, and my next meal, and where can I wash this, and often I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but like people who are unhoused are regular people, and they also have relationships with each other and are sometimes moving through different dynamics, different conflicts and changes in relationship the way that everyone
Right.
does. And so when you think about people who are housed, who are navigating different aspects of their life, including relationship and caring for pets, caring for children, and then navigating grief, the loss of a loved one.
Yeah.
For a homeless person, it's amplified in so many ways because survival and the possibility of not surviving is just so um, in their face.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up that, issue of like the dynamics of relationships because even, when someone dies in a house situation, whether it's a parent or a child or a sibling or something, it creates these potentially like tensions or challenges or a restructuring, and those would happen just the same with those who are unhoused, and the lack of privacy, right, to deal with the grief, right? The almost, when we experience grief, there's like this fear of almost like giving into it because if I start crying, if I start grieving, how am I going to get up and do the day? And for these people, that's like an everyday thing is how am I going to get up and deal with the day? So even, leaning into their grief, like it's almost like a survival mechanism, maybe not to try and push it off. And especially if it's happening regularly around them and it's a fear of their own.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's this other aspect to it as well when um, people who are unhoused, of course, this is not a monolith of people. I'm kind of just saying this as a general term, but they may also experience death from death of people who are not unhoused. You know,
Right.
like say say back at home in their hometown, their sibling has passed away, and
Right.
they hear news of this, or they're still connected to their family, whatever the situation. Um, they may not have the resources to attend that funeral,
Right.
to get a bus to their hometown, to get the clothes to wear, the hygiene supplies, to be able to go and to um, participate in that way. Recently, we were helping somebody in that situation to be able to get to their family member's funeral, but that's also a big aspect of it as well. And I've also seen people where living on house where their pets pass away as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
And like it's just those situations are awful in any
Yeah.
case. Yeah.
Wow, there's like so much in there, right? Of just even just the worlds, like the different worlds of the housed and the unhoused and imagining someone who finds out about the loss of someone in their family, but they might not find out right away because it might be harder to get in contact with them, or maybe they're not in regular contact. And then, weeks, months down the road, they find out someone that really mattered to them died. And they don't maybe have those connections or the opportunity to attend a funeral because it's already passed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there
So
can be so much isolation
yeah,
and
absolutely.
disconnection. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the memorials, who typically attends those?
So they're attended by there are folks who working in other community organizations, people around Trinity Square where we're located, who are unhoused, will attend. Um, let's see, there's such a like a kind of a mixture of people, advocates for housing, social justice, will attend as well. People from our church, yeah.
How long have you been involved in these memorials?
I've been involved almost 3 years now.
And how has this changed you? How has this influenced you? Um, any sort of way that this has now been a part of you and who you are kind of going forward?
Oh goodness. I think about how at the memorials we've been starting each one by saying, we're here to mourn those we've loved and lost, and we're also here to say that this isn't right.
Hmm.
I think it's attending them has made me angrier.
Yeah.
Um, because these deaths are so unnecessary.
Yeah.
Um, there was a community member who has now passed away. Um, he was only in his 50s, and he was saying to me, he's like, all my friends are dead. And that's so common to hear. And like, this isn't someone who's like in their 90s, 100. This is someone who's
Yeah.
50, where almost everyone he knows because they're unhoused has passed away.
That's
And
awful.
it's just like it's just so wrong, and it's a crisis, and it's a kind of a constructed crisis.
Injustice.
It's an avoidable
Mhm.
crisis. Yeah, it's a it's an injustice. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, do you know sort of if there's like an average age or a common cause of death? Actually, I'm going to stop myself there because maybe do we say being unhoused is a cause of death? Is that something? Can you share a little bit about that if my language is wrong or there's something that we can kind of educate others about right now? Is being unhoused a cause of death? Or how do we kind of want to navigate that as we speak better about it?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that kind of terminology, because it's really unsafe to be unhoused.
Hmm.
Um, it's not looking at like the individual. It's looking at the conditions. Living and trying to survive without housing is
Yeah.
incredibly unhealthy, incredibly unsafe. There was a recent study by Unity Health that found that if you're unhoused, it'll take 17 years off of your life
Wow.
in in accordance to the general population.
Yeah.
Like when you're unhoused, you're so vulnerable and exposed to so much. like there's causes of death related to like weather related injuries, hypothermia, frostbite, pneumonia, heat stroke. Um, in Toronto, there's also a huge problem with the street drug supply where it is getting contaminated with harmful substances, and people don't realize this when they're using, and so this is also a big cause of death as
Right.
well. There's also high rates of cancers, cardiovascular disease, and these things may just go unchecked for years when people
Absolutely.
aren't accessing healthcare. Um, Last week, I was talking to a community member here where she was in the hospital because of severe asthma. She's out of the hospital, but now she's just going back to living in a tent. So people are living in these conditions that are awful for their health, where they can't, if they get something like an infection, like pneumonia, which is really common, they
Right.
can't really recover from that in these conditions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just keep thinking about like how alone these people are in these challenges. And yeah, to go to the hospital to be told that you have a condition that could be life-threatening, and then you're just released to the street, which is, is just going to amplify those challenges. Um,
Yeah.
how Before you got involved in this, was this something that you had thought, when I grow up or through schooling or experience, you wanted to be closer to this population to be of help or be witness, I guess? Or how did you kind of find yourself here?
Before I was working here, I was with another organization called Maggie's Toronto Sex Workers Action Project. Amazing organization led by sex workers for sex workers. So, providing harm reduction services, case management, legal support, community building. Um, and Sex workers such a like there's such a variety of people and experiences and circumstances and folks doing sex work, and there's so much stigma around the industry, but we always had street outreach teams who were engaged with folks who were in shelters and on the streets. So I would say like a lot of my work involved has been involved with engaging with folks who are like navigating homelessness.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole other conversation we should have, right? Around deaths with sex workers and the dangers.
Yeah.
Um, how has this experience changed how you see your own death? If you're comfortable sharing that, has it changed how you feel about your own death? What a good death to you would be, what you hope other people would experience, whether like a just death or an honoring?
Oh goodness, yeah. I'm trying to navigate and really move through those questions. As I'm sure like most of us are, because working here, like mortality becomes such a reality. It's harder for it to be kind of to
Right.
the side when you're seeing it. Sometimes it was seeing people overdose, seeing people
Right.
die, um, and like it definitely has made me think, like, just a reminder, like someday I will die.
Right.
Um, and there's something about seeing these deaths, these people who are dying young.
Mm,
Um, it's quite scary, even though I know that death is inevitable. It's the marginalization, it's the injustice
right.
of these deaths, and knowing that Toronto, we're in a affordability crisis. There's so much precarity. Um, like most of us are just like a paycheck away from being homeless. So it really puts that in my face, and also the death piece as
Yeah.
well.
I want to give attention to like your own grief, right? Because I know that so much of what you do is being there and holding space for others to have that grief. How do you navigate this? I mean, it's been 3 years, not that it's any easier now, but maybe you have some strategies of how you take care of yourself so you don't, fall into, never-ending grief daily, right? Is there some things that you've done or you've noticed have changed in yourself over time to deal with all this grief?
Oh, that's such a good question, and something I'm still learning. Somehow, growing up, I had the incredible fortune to not experience the death of a person who was close to me.
Mm,
I experienced the death of pets, and that was devastating for me. But as an adult, and now like experiencing the death of humans, it's actually like a new experience for me.
right.
This past summer, a community member who was experiencing houselessness passed away, and he was someone who I was close to and just really really fond of, and he died of pneumonia in
Mm,
his tent, and it was just so awful. Even just thinking about it now, it's just like I miss him so much, and
yeah.
um, yeah, it's been really really hard, and something that I did for myself is I reached out to organization Hospice Toronto, who provides grief support, just to be able to just sit and just talk with someone and just to be able to cry and just to be heard in
Yeah.
that, because I kind of didn't know, it was such a new experience for me. I kind of didn't know what to
Yeah.
do. Um, and it felt scary too. Like you're saying, it's kind of like once you start crying, you kind of turn the faucet. There's that worry of like, what if I never stop? What if I never move out of this,
Yeah.
area of grief? Um, but I found that allowing myself to be with other people in it and not trying to grieve alone, that made a big difference for me.
Yeah. I'm so sorry for the loss of your friend and likely many friends that you've met along the way. Um, yeah, that's it. I'm sorry about that. So you mentioned the memorials are one opportunity to honor people who have died, but also to, create change, to get angry and to say, hey, this is not just. These aren't deaths that should have happened potentially, or they could have been prevented, or the care that was given to these people before they died is not equal care to other populations. What are you hoping that these memorials do in that regard, other than honoring those who've died? What changes do you hope to see as time goes on?
Yeah, I'm hoping to see major changes in housing. We're constantly having new condos go up, but not affordable housing
Hmm.
for folks. Um, so there's changes that are really needed at that major level, because it's economy, house affordability that's really driving um, this problem. So I'm hoping that the homeless memorial can really help challenge the authorities on this, and especially when you're giving names to folks, you're taking a moment and saying this is how many people have died.
Yeah.
And then I'm also hoping just on that individual human level that people get the support that they need in that moment, and that this will further help to grow people's like empathy
Right.
and to humanize homeless people, because we live in a society that really tries to say that these lives aren't valuable.
Right.
Just keep walking, they're not valuable. um, where
Do
it's like,
you?
no, this person was once a baby that someone held in their arms, like these are real people.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I don't know if you have an answer. I don't know that I have an answer. Why do you think it is that we do that? Or how can we do that? How can we walk by people or even in some cases, say unkind things about people who are unhoused? Um, how do we do that? Do you have any understandings of that or why we How is it that there are people who are unhoused, I guess, is our big question that people are wondering who do care and are in touch with this and have really struggle with the fact that this is a reality, to the point that people die on the street.
Yeah, I think it's so layered because I think there are so many people who care, but it's also such a huge problem
Hmm.
that understandably, rightly so, you kind of feel as an individual like what can I do?
Yeah.
Um, and there, how do I say this? There is something to not taking it all as an individual responsibility.
True.
Like we need to be looking at the government,
Structure?
like it is their responsibility not to download that on ourselves. Um, but I also believe that we do have sort of a human to human responsibility to treat each other with respect and with kindness. That doesn't mean that we always have something monetary to give to someone, or that maybe we're not always in conversation, and our capacities differ, right, in what we're able to give. Um, but there's also just something about looking at the face of the other person and not treating them with coldness either.
Yeah. Um, I want to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to ask some questions that I've been wondering and to give an opportunity for people to really think more about this, right? Another hidden happening that's taking place
Mhm.
with those who are unhoused. And I thought maybe to end the conversation, like, is there a moment or a saying or something that you've learned along the way that really changed your way of looking at unhoused people? Because I think, one of the things for me was realizing that uh, they're the same as me. I know that seems so basic, but that all the struggles I have, I get to do it behind walls and they don't. And that really, when I would see people on the street struggling with mental health issues or just crying or just, acting in a way that, we're not supposed to act in public, I realized they don't have a private place to act like this. They don't have a car to cry in or a shower to scream in or any of those things. And I'm wondering, do you have something that really you feel just it's like always with you, this remembering of how we're the same or um, your own work within this space?
Yeah, I would say for me, it really comes down to relationship and being able to have some kind of contact with people and being able to know people even in small ways. And it's also the reality that we're all suffering.
Mhm.
There's different degrees of suffering that looks different ways, um, but we live in a world where there's a lot of complexities, a lot of difficulty, and everyone experiences death and loss in in different ways. And so even though it may look different for each other, that is something that we're all united in.
I love
Um,
that. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Jenny. Just a reminder to people who are listening, there's a monthly gathering in Toronto, and I believe that there are different cities around the world that have monthly memorials for those who are unhoused. So you can Google that, but I'll make sure to put a link for the Facebook page. And if you're in the Toronto area, I encourage you to show up and to get angry as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Jenny. Have a great day. Thank you so much for tuning in to another conversation around death. My hope is that something today spoke to you and that you bring that new knowing or thought or feeling into conversations in your own life. If there's a topic or a guest that you think would be great for the show, reach out and let me know.